The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council sparkled with lights from 1,000 worlds. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for the most important celebration in 50 years. Today marked the anniversary of the Great Peace, the day when war finally ended and prosperity began. Councillor Velthar stood at the center podium, his crystal body catching the light and throwing rainbows across the marble floor. The Vorthak leader raised his arms and the massive crowd fell silent. His voice echoed through the hall like music from wind chimes. 50 years ago we faced our greatest threat, Velthar began. The humans of Earth brought chaos to our peaceful galaxy. They fought with savage fury and refused all reasonable terms. But today we celebrate their destruction and our victory over barbarism. The crowd cheered. General Morgak of the Gromax pounded his massive fists together. His gray skin was covered in scars from the old wars, but his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Next to him, Ambassador Quindal of the Mindari floated in her energy form, glowing soft blue with contentment. The human homeworld burns as space dust, Velthar continued. Their fleets are scattered to the void. Never again will their violence threaten our children. Peace reigns eternal. More cheers filled the hall. Traders smiled as they thought of their profitable routes. Families felt safe knowing their worlds were protected. Military officers enjoyed their easy assignments guarding quiet borders. But far beyond the celebration, in the cold darkness between stars, something moved through the void. It was sleek and black, invisible to most sensors. The ship called Silent Thunder drifted like a shadow, watching and waiting. On the bridge, Admiral Quan Dae Ho studied the screens showing the council celebration. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his dark eyes burned with memory. Behind him, Captain Park Sojin checked their position on the star charts. They really believe we're dead, Park said quietly. Look how happy they are. Let them celebrate, Quan replied. They earned this moment. But moments end. Dr. Choi Minwoo looked up from his science station. Admiral, our long-range scanners show minimal patrol activity in this sector. Most of their defense fleets are positioned around core worlds for the celebration. Quan nodded. It was exactly what they expected. The galaxy had grown soft in 50 years of peace. Border stations ran on skeleton crews. Military exercises were rare. Most worlds didn't even maintain orbital defenses anymore. Sir, called Navigator Im Tae-young from her station, we're receiving standard commercial traffic on all frequencies. No military encryption, no security protocols. They're broadcasting everything in the clear. Of course they are, said Engineer Lee Hyrin with a bitter laugh. Why would they need security? Humans are extinct, remember? The bridge crew shared dark smiles. They all remembered the lies, the betrayal, the day the galaxy turned its back on Earth. But they also remembered the secret evacuation, the hidden colonies, the years of preparation in dark space. Commander Yoon Ji-ho stepped forward with his intelligence report. Admiral, our reconnaissance confirms the intelligence from our sleeper agents. The Vorthak have reduced their fleet by 60%. The Gromax have converted most of their warships to cargo vessels. The Mindari spend more on art than defense. And the humans they left behind? Quan asked. Yoon's face darkened. Prison worlds, forced labor camps, medical experiments. They're using our people as slaves while celebrating our extinction. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Every crew member had lost family and friends to the galaxy's betrayal. But they had also spent 50 years preparing for this moment. Tactical Officer Bae Sun-ho, Quan called out. What's our weapon status? Bae checked his displays. All systems operational, Admiral. Quantum cannons charged, shield generators at full power, stealth field maintaining 99% effectiveness. Good. Continue monitoring their celebrations. I want to know exactly how unprepared they are. On the main screen, the galactic leaders continued their speeches. General Morgak had taken the podium and was bragging about Gromax's military might. He spoke of their invincible fleets and impenetrable defenses. The crowd laughed at his jokes about extinct humans. Intelligence Chief Onari, Quan said into his communicator. What's the status of our assets across the galaxy? Her voice crackled back through the secure channel. All sleeper agents remain undetected, Admiral. They've integrated well into alien societies over the past 5 decades. Many hold important positions in government, military, and trade organizations. Excellent.
Have them maintain their positions.
The time for action approaches, but not yet. Medical Officer Shin Kyung-soo joined them on the bridge. His face was grim as he carried data tablets. Admiral, I finished analyzing the intelligence reports from the prison worlds. The conditions are worse than we thought. Our people are dying. Quan's hands tightened into fists. How many? Millions, sir. They've been working our civilians to death in mining operations, using human test subjects for biological weapons research. Some worlds have entire populations in slavery. The bridge crew exchanged angry looks. Captain Park stepped closer to the Admiral. Sir, we could strike now. Take out their celebration. Eliminate their leadership in one blow. Quan considered this. It would be satisfying to watch the council building burn, but revenge without purpose was just violence. They needed to be smarter than their enemies expected. No, he said finally. Let them finish their party. Let them believe they're safe. When we move, it will be calculated and complete. On the screen, Counselor Velthar was concluding his speech. Today begins another 50 years of prosperity. The galaxy is united, peaceful, and strong. The crowd erupted in applause. Fireworks exploded over the council building. Ships across the galaxy sounded their horns in celebration. The party would last for days, but in the darkness between stars, the silent thunder waited. Its sensors recorded everything. Its computers calculated probabilities. Its crew remembered their dead and planned for justice. Admiral Quan De Ho stood silently as the celebration continued. 50 years ago, these same leaders had promised safe passage for Earth's evacuation fleets. They had sworn on their honor to respect human territorial claims. They had signed treaties guaranteeing protection for human civilians. Then they had broken every promise. They had attacked the evacuation ships. They had claimed human worlds for themselves. They had enslaved or killed every human they could find, but they had made one critical mistake. They had believed Earth was truly destroyed. They had never imagined that humanity might be patient enough to disappear, to hide, to plan for decades before returning. Communications Officer Song Yunbi, Quan said quietly, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the galaxy is exactly as vulnerable as we hoped. Begin Phase 2. Song's fingers moved across her console. Message sent, Admiral. Quan smiled for the first time in months. The galaxy was celebrating its victory over humanity. Soon, they would learn what humanity had become in 50 years of exile. The silent thunder adjusted its course toward the first target system. The celebration below would continue for days. But when it ended, the galaxy would wake up to find that their greatest nightmare had returned. 3 days after the celebration ended, strange reports began reaching the Galactic Council. Captain Corvex of the Gromax patrol ship Ironhammer was the first to see something impossible. His ship was cruising through the outer rim, checking trade routes that hadn't seen military patrols in years. The crew was relaxed, playing cards and sharing stories from the celebration. Nobody expected trouble in such a quiet sector. Sir, called his sensor operator. I'm detecting an energy signature at the edge of our range. Corvex barely looked up from his meal. Probably a cargo hauler with a busted engine. Send them a standard assistance offer. Sir, the signature doesn't match any known ship design. It's different. Something in the operator's voice made Corvex pay attention. He walked to the sensor station and studied the readings. The energy pattern was unlike anything in their databases. It was too clean, too efficient, too advanced. Try to get a visual, he ordered. The main screen flickered as their cameras focused on the distant contact. For a moment, they saw nothing but stars. Then something moved across their field of view, blacking out starlight for just an instant. Did you see that? The operator whispered. Before Corvex could answer, their proximity alarm screamed. The unknown ship had somehow moved to within weapons range without their sensors detecting it. The Gromax captain stared at his displays in confusion. Nothing could move that fast without leaving a trace. All stations, battle alert, he shouted. Unknown vessel, identify yourself. No response came. The mysterious ship hung in space like a dark shadow. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange energy patterns rippled across its surface. Captain, his weapons officer called out, I can't get a target lock. Our systems keep losing the contact. That's impossible. It's right there. But even as he spoke, the ship began to fade from view, not moving away but actually becoming invisible. Within seconds, it had vanished completely from both visual and sensor contact. Corvex stood frozen on his bridge. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen anything like it. He sent an immediate report to Gromax High Command, but his words sounded crazy even to himself. Similar encounters happened across the galaxy over the following weeks. Trade ships reported glimpses of unknown vessels that disappeared before sensors could scan them. Military patrols found empty space where their computers insisted a large ship was hiding. Mining stations detected massive energy signatures that vanished without explanation. At the Galactic Council, these reports created confusion rather than concern. Most officials dismissed them as sensor glitches or pilot errors. After 50 years of peace, nobody expected real threats. Ambassador Quindal of the Mindari was the first to suggest something serious was happening. Her energy form flickered with worry as she addressed an emergency session. "The pattern is clear," she said in her musical voice. "These sightings are moving toward populated systems. Something is studying us." Counselor Velthar's crystal body chimed softly with disagreement. "Impossible. Our long-range sensors would detect any approaching fleet. These are isolated incidents, nothing more." "Then explain the energy readings," Quindal insisted. "My scientists have analyzed the data. This technology is decades ahead of anything we possess." General Morgak laughed from his seat. "The Mindari see phantoms in every shadow. Our military controls this galaxy. No unknown force could operate without our knowledge." But privately, Morgak was worried. His best commanders were reporting impossible encounters. Ships that moved faster than physics allowed. Weapons that created no energy signatures. Hull materials that seemed to bend light itself. Meanwhile, aboard the Silent Thunder, Admiral Quan De Ho studied intelligence reports from across the galaxy. His ship had been conducting reconnaissance for weeks, testing alien response times and defensive capabilities. The results were better than he had hoped. "Their sensor networks have more holes than Swiss cheese," reported Navigator Imte Young. "We've mapped safe passages to every major system." Engineer Lee Hyrin nodded from her station. "Their technology hasn't advanced much in 50 years. We could probably defeat their entire fleet with just our defensive systems." "Don't underestimate them," warned Captain Park So-jin. "Overconfidence killed many good soldiers during the evacuation." Dr. Choi Minwoo looked up from his analysis. "Admiral, I've been studying their communications. They're starting to panic. Some officials are calling for increased military patrols." "How are they explaining our presence?" Quan asked. "They're not. Most still refuse to believe we exist. They're blaming sensor malfunctions and pilot hallucinations." Quan smiled grimly. The galaxy's leaders were as arrogant as ever. They couldn't imagine that humanity had survived their betrayal, let alone returned stronger than before. "Intelligence Chief Onari," he called through the communicator. "What's the status of our reconnaissance mission?" Her voice came back clear and professional. "We've identified the locations of all major military installations, Admiral. Most are operating at minimum security. Their fleet positions are exactly where our agents predicted. And the prison worlds. We've located 17 facilities holding human survivors. Conditions are difficult, but rescue operations are possible once we begin active operations." Quan nodded. Soon, very soon, those facilities would be liberated. But first, they needed to complete their intelligence gathering. The Silent Thunder's next target was the Mindari homeworld, center of the galaxy's scientific research. If any species might detect their true capabilities, it would be the energy-based Mindari with their advanced sensors. Commander Yoon Ji-ho prepared his reconnaissance team for the approach. "Remember, we're testing their best detection systems. No unnecessary risks." The ship slipped through hyperspace using routes that human explorers had mapped decades ago, paths that the galaxy had forgotten, if they ever knew them at all. The Silent Thunder emerged in the outer system, invisible to standard sensors. The Mindari homeworld glowed with pure energy, beautiful and alien. Orbital research stations floated like jewels around the planet. Energy beings moved between them in streams of light. "Passive scans only," Quan ordered. "I want to know what they can detect without revealing our full capabilities." For hours, they observed the Mindari at work. Their science was impressive, but focused on energy manipulation rather than military applications. They had grown soft during the long peace. "Admiral," whispered Tactical Officer Bei Sun-ho, "I'm detecting focused sensor sweeps. They know something is here." On the planet below, Mindari scientists had indeed detected anomalies in local space. Energy patterns that suggested a massive object was nearby, but their instruments couldn't pinpoint its location. Dr. Lysiandra, the planet's chief scientist, studied the readings with growing alarm. This energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. The technology required to generate such patterns, could it be natural? Asked her assistant. No, this is artificial, and advanced beyond our understanding. She sent an urgent message to the Galactic Council, but knew it would be dismissed like all the others. The galaxy's leaders refused to believe their sensors could be fooled. Meanwhile, the Silent Thunder completed its reconnaissance and began moving toward its next target. Every system they visited revealed the same pattern: reduced military presence, outdated technology, and leaders too proud to admit they were vulnerable. Communications Officer Song Yunbi, Quan called out. Send another status update to Earth Command. Tell them the enemy is even weaker than our worst-case scenarios predicted. Message sent, Admiral. Quan studied the star charts showing their next objectives. Soon they would begin active reconnaissance, allowing themselves to be detected more clearly. The galaxy needed to understand that something powerful was moving through their space, but they also needed to remain convinced that it was just one ship. Let them think it was an anomaly, a rogue vessel, perhaps even a ghost story. The truth about Earth's return would be revealed when the time was right. Course laid in for the Vorthak mining colonies, announced Im Tae-young. Execute. Quan replied. The Silent Thunder vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Mindari homeworld behind. In the research stations, alarms were still sounding as scientists tried to understand what they had almost detected. Across the galaxy, similar encounters were building a pattern of fear and confusion. Something was out there, something powerful and unknown. But the leaders of the galaxy remained convinced that their military superiority was absolute. They had forgotten the most important lesson of war. Never assume your enemy is truly defeated until you've seen their bodies burn. The Vorthak mining colony of Crystalline Falls should have been a routine stop for any cargo ship. The crystal beings had been extracting rare minerals from the asteroid field for decades without incident. But when the morning shift arrived at the main processing station, they found something that would change everything. The facility was empty. Not destroyed, not damaged, just completely abandoned. 60,000 workers had simply vanished overnight without a trace. Their tools lay where they had dropped them. Meals sat half-finished in the cafeteria, but not a single being remained. Overseer Kithel's crystal form vibrated with panic as he searched the facility. The security cameras showed nothing unusual until exactly midnight, when they simply went dark. Emergency beacons were still functioning, but no distress signals had been sent. Search the asteroid fields, he ordered his security teams. They must be somewhere. But the search teams found only empty mining tunnels and abandoned equipment. Whatever had taken the workers had left no signs of struggle, no evidence of violence. They had simply disappeared. The report reached the Galactic Council within hours, adding to a growing pile of similar incidents. Outer colonies going silent, trade ships vanishing without distress calls, military patrols finding empty systems where thriving communities should be. High Counselor Zephan of the Vorthak called an emergency session. Her crystal form was darker than usual, indicating deep worry. We can no longer ignore these events. Something is systematically targeting our outer territories. General Morgak slammed his fist on the council table. Impossible. Our intelligence networks would detect any major threat. These are isolated incidents, nothing more. Isolated? Quindle's energy form flared brighter. 47 colonies have gone silent in the past month. That's not coincidence. Fleet Admiral Braktor, the most experienced military commander in the galaxy, studied the tactical displays. His scarred face showed concern as he traced the pattern of disappearances. They're not random, he said quietly. Look at the locations. Someone is testing our response times, probing our defenses. Testing for what? Demanded Morgak. For weaknesses. This is reconnaissance, not random attacks. Counselor Velthar's crystal body chimed with dismissal. You're seeing patterns that don't exist. Who could possibly challenge our combined fleets? Braktor turned to face the assembled leaders. Someone who knows our capabilities better than we know theirs. Meanwhile, far from the council chambers, the Silent Thunder was completing its most daring mission yet. Admiral Quan De-ho stood on the bridge as they approached the human prison world of Broken Hope. The planet was a nightmare of forced labor camps and research facilities. 50,000 human survivors worked in the mines under Gromak's supervision, but they weren't mining minerals. They were being used as test subjects for biological weapons development. Stealth field at maximum, ordered Captain Park So-jin. Begin transport operations. Medical Officer Shin Kyung-soo monitored the rescue operation from his station. Teams are reporting successful extractions from sectors 7 through 12. The prisoners are in poor condition but stable. Any Gromax casualties? Asked Kwon. The guards are unconscious but unharmed. Our stun weapons worked perfectly. In the mining camps below, human rescue teams moved like shadows through the facilities. Their advanced armor made them nearly invisible as they gathered survivors and disabled security systems. The operation was swift and silent. Commander Yoon Ji-ho coordinated the evacuation from the tactical station. All prisoners secured, Admiral. Estimated completion in 30 minutes. Excellent. Prepare the evidence packages. Intelligence Chief Onari had been gathering proof of the galaxy's crimes against humanity for months. Video recordings of forced medical experiments, documents showing the deliberate enslavement of human civilians, evidence that would shock even the most callous galactic leaders. Packages ready for transmission, she reported. Once we broadcast these files, the galaxy will know what they've been doing to our people. Good. Let them try to explain genocide as routine administrative policy. The Silent Thunder's advanced systems had cracked every encryption the galaxy used. They had access to classified military communications, secret government files, and private corporate records. The evidence of systematic human extinction was overwhelming. As the last prisoners were brought aboard, Dr. Choi Min-woo completed his analysis of the abandoned facility. Admiral, I've downloaded their research files. They've been developing biological weapons specifically designed to target human genetics. Kwon's face went cold. How effective are these weapons? Potentially devastating. But they never completed the project. The research requires live human test subjects, and we just removed their entire supply. Then we arrived just in time. Tactical Officer Bae Sun-ho looked up from his station. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting multiple Gromax patrol ships approaching this system. They're responding to our presence. How long until they arrive? 18 hours at maximum speed. Kwon smiled. 18 hours was perfect timing. It would give the rescue ships time to reach safety while allowing the Gromax to discover what they had lost. Navigator Im Tae-young set course for the rendezvous point, but take us through the main shipping lanes. I want to be seen. For the first time since beginning their reconnaissance, the Silent Thunder deliberately revealed itself to enemy sensors. The ship dropped its stealth field as it passed through the busiest trade route in Gromax space. The effect was immediate. Cargo ships sent panicked distress calls. Military patrols scrambled to intercept. Within hours, every Gromax commander knew that an unknown supership was moving through their territory. Captain Thorgrim of the Gromax Heavy Cruiser Devastator was the first to get a clear sensor reading. His massive ship was one of the most powerful in the galaxy, armed with weapons that could crack planets. But when he saw the Silent Thunder's energy signature, his blood ran cold. That's impossible, he whispered. No ship can generate that much power. His weapons officer confirmed the readings. Sir, the target's energy output exceeds our entire fleet's combined capability, and that's just what our sensors can detect. Try to establish communications. They sent messages on every frequency in every galactic language. The Silent Thunder received them all but chose not to respond. Instead, it continued on its course, allowing itself to be tracked and studied. On the bridge, engineer Lee Hai-rin monitored their pursuers. Multiple ships converging on our position, Admiral. They're forming a pursuit formation. Let them follow, Kwon replied, but stay just outside their weapons range. I want them to see what they're dealing with without giving them a chance to do anything about it. The chase continued for hours. Gromax ships pushed their engines to maximum, but the Silent Thunder stayed ahead with what seemed like casual ease. It wasn't even trying to escape, just maintaining distance while allowing the enemy to study its capabilities. Communications Officer Song Yoon-bi intercepted the Gromax military transmissions. Admiral, they're requesting immediate backup. Multiple fleets are moving to intercept us. How many ships? Over 200 vessels, sir. They're pulling forces from across their territory. Kwon nodded with satisfaction. The galaxy was finally taking the threat seriously. Soon their leaders would understand that humanity had returned. But first, they needed to see the evidence of their crimes. Onari began broadcasting the files they had gathered from the prison world. Images of human children in laboratory cages. documents ordering the execution of civilian families, video recordings of torture sessions disguised as medical research. The broadcasts went out on every frequency, to every world in the galaxy. Within hours, the evidence was spreading through news networks and social media. The galaxy's citizens began to understand what their governments had been doing in secret. On the Mindari homeworld, Dr. Lysiandra studied the energy readings from the mysterious ship with growing horror. She had finally identified the technology signatures. They matched theoretical designs from human research that had been thought lost forever. "This is impossible," she whispered to her assistant. "These energy patterns, they're human technology, advanced beyond anything we've seen. But the humans are extinct." The council said the council was wrong. Very, very wrong. She sent an urgent message to the galactic leaders but knew it would arrive too late. The ship was already moving toward the core systems, and she doubted anything in the galaxy could stop it. Aboard the Silent Thunder, Admiral Quan prepared for the next phase of their mission. The evidence was spreading, the galaxy was mobilizing, and their people were safe. Now it was time to announce humanity's return. "Open a channel to all galactic frequencies," he ordered. Song's fingers moved across her controls. "Channel open, Admiral." Quan stepped forward, knowing that his words would be heard across the galaxy. "People of the galaxy, this is Admiral Quan Ho of the Earth vessel Silent Thunder. For 50 years you have believed humanity was extinct. You were mistaken." The message sent shockwaves through every world. In the Galactic Council chambers, the leaders stared at their screens in disbelief. General Morgak's face had gone pale. Councillor Velthar's crystal form was vibrating with fear. "We have returned to collect our people and demand justice for your crimes," Quan continued. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council looked very different than it had during the celebration just months before. Gone were the cheerful decorations and confident speeches. Instead, armed human guards stood at every entrance while Earth's flag hung beside the symbols of every major galactic power. President Kim Young-ho sat at the head of the council table, reviewing the surrender documents that would reshape the galaxy forever. His calm demeanor hid the satisfaction he felt at seeing the same leaders, who had celebrated humanity's extinction, now begging for mercy. "Counselor," Velthar's crystal form was dim with shame as he signed the reparations agreement. The Vorthak would pay for their crimes against human civilians with mining rights to their richest asteroid fields. It was a small price compared to the lives they had destroyed. General Morgak refused to look up as he added his signature to the military cooperation treaty. The Gromax armed forces would be reduced by 70%, with human observers stationed at every major military installation. Their weapons research programs would be shut down permanently. Ambassador Quindle's energy form flickered weakly as she agreed to technology sharing agreements. The Mindari would provide their scientific knowledge to help rebuild human colonies, while human engineers would modernize their outdated defensive systems. But not everyone accepted defeat gracefully. Supreme Admiral Thisara stood up from the table, her energy form blazing with anger. "This is humiliation. We will not bow to extinct barbarians." Before the human guards could react, Admiral Quan Ho stepped forward. He had been standing quietly in the corner, but now his presence filled the room. "Extinct barbarians?" he asked softly.
Is that what you called the children you murdered in your research labs?
Thisara's form wavered as she realized her mistake. That was military necessity. Was it necessary to experiment on human infants? Was it necessary to use our people as slave labor while celebrating our extinction? The Mindari leader had no answer. Around the table, other galactic officials shifted uncomfortably as they remembered the evidence broadcasts that had shocked their populations. Public opinion across the galaxy now supported the human demands for justice. "You have a choice," Quan continued. "Accept these terms and live in peace under the new order. Or continue resisting and face the consequences." As if summoned by his words, the room's windows darkened as massive shapes passed overhead. The human fleet maintained orbit around every major world in the galaxy, a constant reminder of Earth's new military supremacy. Captain Park Sojin entered the chamber with a status report. "Admiral, the liberation of the prison worlds is complete. We've rescued over 2 million human survivors from the labor camps. Condition of the survivors. Medical Officer Shin Kyung-soo reports they're recovering well. Many require extensive treatment, but they're alive." President Kim nodded with satisfaction. "See that they receive the best care possible. They've suffered enough. The rescue operations had been swift and decisive. Human strike teams had appeared simultaneously at 17 prison worlds, overwhelming the guards and evacuating every human captive. The galactic powers had been helpless to stop them. Dr. Choi Min-woo approached with his analysis of captured alien technology. Mr. President, we've completed our review of their weapons research. Most of their projects were focused on developing new ways to kill humans. None of their scientists considered that we might develop countermeasures. Typical, muttered engineer Lee Hyron. They spent 50 years planning our extinction instead of improving their own defenses. Intelligence Chief Onari had been monitoring galactic communications since the surrender. Sir, resistance movements are forming on several worlds. Some military commanders refuse to accept the new treaties. How many ships do they have? Asked Kwan. Perhaps 300 vessels scattered across the outer rim. Nothing we can't handle. President Kim considered this. They could easily crush any resistance with overwhelming force, but that would make them the same kind of tyrants they had overthrown. Offer them a choice. Surrender and join the new galactic order, or face exile beyond the rim. No more killing unless they force us to defend ourselves. It was a generous offer, more than the galaxy had given humanity 50 years ago. But Kim understood that lasting peace required justice, not revenge. Commander Yoon Ji-ho entered with reports from the reconstruction teams. Mr. President, we've begun rebuilding the human colonies that were destroyed during the evacuation. The agricultural world should be productive again within 2 years. And the memorial sites? Construction is proceeding on schedule. Every world where humans died will have a monument to remember their sacrifice. The monuments would serve a dual purpose. They would honor the human dead while reminding the galaxy of the price of betrayal. Future generations would know what happened when civilized species abandoned their principles for profit. Tactical Officer Bae Sun-ho reported from the orbital stations. Admiral, our defense networks are now operational around all human worlds. The galaxy won't be able to launch a surprise attack ever again. The new defensive systems were decades ahead of anything the galaxy possessed. Energy shields that could stop planet-killer weapons. Sensor networks that could detect cloaked ships across multiple star systems. Automated weapon platforms that never slept or grew careless. Communications Officer Song Yoon-bi had been coordinating with human agents across the galaxy. Sir, our sleeper agents report that most populations are adapting well to the new order. Trade is resuming and there's been minimal civil unrest. It helped that humans had proven they could be fair rulers as well as effective conquerors. Worlds that cooperated with the new treaties found their economies improving under human trade agreements. Those that resisted discovered that Earth's economic power was as overwhelming as their military might. Navigator Im Tae-young brought news from Earth itself. Mr. President, the Home Fleet reports that our reconstruction efforts are ahead of schedule. Earth should be habitable again within 5 years. The human homeworld had been badly damaged during the evacuation 50 years ago, but it was being rebuilt with technology far superior to what had existed before. Soon Earth would be the crown jewel of human space once again. As the negotiations continued, President Kim reflected on how far humanity had come. 50 years ago, they had been refugees fleeing a galaxy that wanted them dead. Now they were the dominant power, setting terms for their former enemies. But with power came responsibility. The new galactic order would be built on principles that the old one had abandoned. Equality, justice, and protection for the weak. Humans had learned from their suffering, and they would ensure that no other species faced extinction for the crime of being different. Admiral Kwan approached the president's chair. Sir, the final surrender documents are ready for signature. Once these are signed, the transition will be complete. Kim studied the papers that would officially end the old galactic order and begin the new one. Human colonies would be restored. War criminals would face trial. Reparations would flow to the survivors. And most importantly, humanity would never again stand alone against a hostile galaxy. There's one more thing, Kim said. I want the Silent Thunder to become humanity's permanent embassy to the galaxy. Admiral Kwan will serve as our first galactic ambassador. Kwan nodded with approval. It's fitting. The ship that announced our return will oversee our integration with galactic society. The Silent Thunder would orbit the galactic capital, a constant reminder of human power but also human willingness to work for peace. Its weapons would remain ready, but its primary mission would be diplomacy. As the ceremony concluded, President Kim stood to address the assembled leaders. Today ends the age of human exile and begins the era of galactic cooperation. We offer you partnership, not domination, prosperity, not destruction. But never forget, we tried peace once before and you chose war. This time, the choice is ours. The galactic leaders signed their names with shaking hands, knowing they had no alternative. Outside the windows, human ships continued their patrols, ensuring that the new order would be respected. 50 years of preparation had led to this moment. Humanity had returned to the galaxy not as refugees or victims, but as its new masters. The galaxy that had celebrated their extinction now lived under human protection. And in the depths of space, construction continued on the newest generation of human vessels, ships that would explore beyond the galactic rim, seeking new worlds and new civilizations. The galaxy had taught humanity an important lesson about the need for strength, and they would never forget it. The age of human dominance had begun, and this time, it would last forever. Thanks for you. The largest fleet in galactic history gathered at the Nexus Station, a massive military complex floating in neutral space. Ships from every major species had answered the emergency call: Gromax battlecruisers with their heavy armor plating, Forthac crystal ships that could bend energy itself, Mindari vessels that seemed to be made of pure light. Together, they represented the combined military might of the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Bractor stood in the command center, studying tactical displays that showed over 3,000 warships arranged in attack formation. Never before had so many vessels assembled for a single battle. The sight should have filled him with confidence, but instead he felt a growing sense of dread. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "all fleet commanders are requesting final battle orders." Bractor nodded grimly. They had tracked the human ship to this system after a week of pursuit. The Silent Thunder had led them here deliberately, staying just ahead of their fastest vessels. Now it waited alone in empty space, a single dark shape against the stars. "This feels wrong," muttered Supreme Admiral Thisara of the Mindari. Her energy form flickered with uncertainty. "No single ship challenges a fleet this size unless they have good reason," finished War Master Grendok of the Gromax. His scarred face showed deep concern. "My ancestors fought humans during the old wars. They never ran from impossible odds." General Morgak pushed past them to the command console. "You're both cowards. It's one ship against 3,000. Order the attack." But Bractor hesitated. His long experience told him something was terribly wrong. The human vessel made no attempt to escape or hide. It simply waited, as if confident of victory against overwhelming odds. "Open a channel to the human ship," he ordered. The main screen activated, showing the bridge of the Silent Thunder. Admiral Quandeho stood calmly at the center, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked exactly like the military commanders Bractor remembered from 50 years ago, but there was something different in his eyes. "Something cold and patient, Admiral Quan," Bractor said formally. "You are outnumbered 3,000 to 1. Surrender now and we will guarantee fair treatment." Quan smiled without warmth. "Fair treatment? Like the fair treatment you gave our children in your research labs? Like the fair treatment you gave our civilians in your slave camps? That was regrettable. But continued resistance will only lead to your destruction." "Will it?" Quan's smile widened. "Tell me, Admiral, when you see one human ship, what do you assume?" The question caught Bractor off guard. "I assume it's alone." "Exactly. Your people have always made that mistake about humans. You see one of us and think we're alone. You never consider that we might be the scout." Before anyone could respond to this cryptic statement, the Silent Thunder began to change. Sections of its hull separated, revealing that what appeared to be a single vessel was actually multiple ships locked together. Within minutes, 5 distinct vessels floated where one had been before. "Impossible," whispered Thisara. "Our sensors would have detected multiple ships." "Your sensors detect what we allow them to detect," Quan replied. "But you're still thinking too small." Weapons Chief Han Dongjun stepped forward on the Silent Thunder's bridge. "Admiral, all systems are ready. Shall we begin the demonstration?" "Proceed, Commander." The 5 human ships spread out in a loose formation, each one moving with fluid grace that seemed to defy physics. Their hulls shimmered as energy fields activated, and space around them began to distort in ways that made seasoned officers feel sick. Admiral Bractor's sensor team scrambled to understand what they were seeing. "Sir, the energy readings are off the charts." Each of those ships is generating more power than our largest dreadnoughts. Begin the attack, ordered General Morgak. All ships open fire. 3,000 warships fired at once. The combined firepower could have destroyed entire planets. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and quantum missiles streaked across space toward the human vessels. None of them hit their targets. The human ships didn't dodge the incoming fire. Instead, they seemed to slip sideways through space, moving into dimensions that normal physics couldn't explain. The massive barrage passed harmlessly through empty space where the ships had been microseconds before. "What just happened?" demanded War Master Grendok. On the silent thunder, Navigator Mte Young checked her instruments. "Phase shift complete, Admiral. We're operating in parallel dimensional space. Their weapons can't touch us while we're shifted." "Excellent. Begin the counterstrike." The human ships reappeared in normal space, but now they were scattered throughout the alien fleet. Somehow they had moved from outside the formation to positions deep within it, appearing next to capital ships that had been protected by layers of escorts. "How did they get inside our formation?" shouted Thaisara. Her question was answered by weapons fire unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human ships opened fire with beams of pure energy that cut through the strongest armor plating like paper, but they weren't trying to destroy the alien vessels. Instead, they targeted specific systems with surgical precision. Gromax battlecruisers found their engines disabled. Forthak crystal ships lost their energy-focusing arrays. Minduri vessels discovered their power cores shut down by exotic particles they couldn't identify. Within minutes, dozens of the galaxy's most powerful warships were floating dead in space. "Sir," called out a panicked communications officer, "the human weapons are somehow interfacing with our computer systems. They're taking control of our ships." Admiral Braktor watched in horror as ship after ship in his fleet reported the same problem. The human weapons weren't just disabling their targets. They were somehow hacking into their systems and taking remote control. Marine Commander An Jae-sung monitored the boarding operations from his station aboard the Silent Thunder. "Admiral, boarding teams report successful infiltration of 47 enemy vessels. Their security systems are decades behind our countermeasures. Any resistance?" "Minimal, sir. Most crews are surrendering as soon as they realize we're aboard. A few are trying to fight, but their weapons are useless against our armor." The human boarding parties moved through alien ships like ghosts. Their advanced suits made them nearly invisible, and their weapons could stun entire crews without causing permanent harm. They weren't conquering the ships. They were simply demonstrating that they could take control whenever they wanted. On the flagship, General Morgak was screaming orders that nobody could follow. "All ships ramming speed. If we can't shoot them, we'll crush them." Several Gromax vessels attempted to ram the human ships, but found themselves moving through empty space as the target's phase shifted away. Meanwhile, more and more alien vessels found their systems compromised by human cyber warfare. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer with a shaking voice, "we've lost contact with over half the fleet. The humans have taken control of their communications and weapons systems." Admiral Braktor stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. The largest fleet in galactic history was being defeated by 5 ships, not destroyed but completely neutralized. The humans were proving they could take control of any vessel they chose. "Open a channel to Admiral Kwan," he said quietly. The screen activated again, showing Kwan still standing calmly on his bridge. Behind him, his crew worked with efficient precision, managing the battle like a training exercise. "Are you ready to discuss terms?" Kwan asked. "What do you want?" "First, the immediate release of all human prisoners from your labor camps and research facilities. Second, reparations for the families you murdered and the worlds you stole. Third, formal recognition that humanity has the right to exist in this galaxy. And if we refuse?" Kwan's expression didn't change, but his voice grew colder. "Then you'll discover what our main fleet can do when it arrives." "Main fleet?" Braktor felt his blood freeze. "How many ships?" "More than you can count, Admiral. What you've seen today is just a single reconnaissance squadron. Earth has spent 50 years preparing for this moment." As if summoned by his words, space began to shimmer around the battlefield. New contacts appeared on every sensor screen, emerging from what seemed like empty space. Hundreds of ships, then thousands materializing from some kind of advanced stealth system. Communications Officer Song Yunbi smiled as she reported the arrivals. "Admiral, the main battle fleet has arrived. All ships reporting ready for combat operations." The alien fleet commanders stared at their screens in shock. They were now outnumbered 10-1 by ships that made their most advanced vessels look like ancient relics. The humans hadn't been bluffing. They had returned in force. President Kim Young-ho's voice came over the communications channel from the flagship of the human fleet. This is President Kim of the Earth Republic. To all galactic leaders, you have 1 hour to begin withdrawing your forces and opening negotiations. After that, we will consider you to be in a state of war with humanity. Admiral Bractor looked around the command center at the faces of his fellow officers. They all showed the same expression, defeat. The galaxy's military might had been broken in a single engagement, and they all knew it. Signal all ships to stand down, he ordered quietly. Prepare for surrender negotiations. General Morgak started to protest, but Grendok grabbed his arm.